the big one that really put us on the map was Shiloh Road. 4 different agencies and 101 landowners. And so in the end, we completed that project. We acquired 101 parcels of right-of-way without a single one going to condemnation.
The following is a Big Sky Economic Development production.
Welcome to The Vault, a Montana-based business podcast where we highlight the people and ideas driving our region forward. I'm your host, Marcel Bruschi.
You're listening to The Vault.
Joining us today on The Vault is Michael Sanderson with Sandbell, a Montana-based company that provides comprehensive land development and public infrastructure design services from offices across the West. So Michael, welcome to The Vault.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. You guys have had some changes happening lately at Sandbell, but before we get into that, we'd love to just know about you and how you grew up, where you grew up, what was that like? So we'll just start with that.
Yeah, start at the beginning. I was born and raised here in Billings. So the typical growing up in the 70s and 80s, I grew up mostly west of Billings, went to Elder Grove School. The classic upbringing, I had an older brother and
Just the two of you?
Yeah, just the two of us.
Okay, so you're the baby brother.
I'm the little guy. My dad was a civil engineer. That's how I got into the business. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But my mom worked in nonprofits, but raised my brother and me. And yeah, it was a pretty great place to grow up in Billings and riding our bikes and playing and had the run of the place like you used to do. And so grew up here, ended up getting bused to high school at West High and then went on to Montana State University and then ultimately came back here to Billings. So yeah, been in Montana my whole life.
Wow. Same. I love Montana. And it's like sometimes, why would you go? But so tell me a little bit, you said growing up in the 70s and 80s in Billings, it probably looked a lot different than it does now with like where we say the West End is.
For sure.
Compared to like when you were here. So what was that like going to West, right? You guys had the run of the town. It was different, but give us a little more detail.
Yeah. Classic story of growing communities in the West. Billings, we've seen that continued expansion to the west. My whole life, when I grew up, 24th Street West was the edge of the urban area. There were neighborhoods and stuff beyond that, but not much else. And you're really out in the country when you got to Shiloh Road. And of course,
now it's like,
now that's the center of activity. And then, like say, I grew up halfway between Billings and Laurel. And at that point in time, we were one of the few kind of non-farm families that lived out there. So I went to school at Elder Grove 1st through 8th grade with the same 12 kids, most of whom were farm kids. And yeah, that's changed a bunch. You go out there, my parents still live where I grew up and it's heavily developed out there now. So it's definitely a changed landscape.
Yeah, kind of fun to see that.
Bittersweet sometimes to go out there and remember how we used to just ride our bikes up and down county roads.
And there was nobody.
There was
right?
nobody
There's
out.
Nothing going on.
Now you wouldn't let your kids ride down the middle of 64th Street West by any means, but that's what we did.
And it's different and they're paved, but they're narrow and all of that. So what drew you to Bozeman? So you said you went to MSU Bozeman, and with your dad being a civil engineer, was that something that you were like, I want to be like Dad and I want to be an engineer?
There was never, people ask me that all the time. I don't remember ever making a conscious decision like I'm going to be a civil engineer. I just grew up in the business. I mean, some of my earliest memories in life were tagging along with my dad to the office. Just, so, I don't know, 3-4 years old, that just always tag along with my dad to the office. We were on evenings and weekends, we'd be driving around town and we'd start driving around checking on projects and so that was just like part of my upbringing. And so when it came time to choose a college major, it just was the obvious choice. I started working for the company as a surveyor when I was still in high school.
Oh, wow.
It just was in my
track.
DNA a bit, but I was actually on the fence between going into engineering or going into music.
Oh.
So I actually went to MSU and studied engineering on a music performance scholarship.
So what kind of
Yeah.
music were you? Was this a high school thing? Were you what was
Grew up
that?
with music in the household. I
Okay.
think it's really important. I think so. My mom played piano. We had a grand piano in the house. It was an expectation that you would learn to play piano.
It's like a life skill. We had
Yeah.
an upright that
Yeah.
was like from like on a wagon, kind of hauled over.
Yeah, music was just around. I was a trombone player. That was the instrument.
Cool,
my
okay.
instrument. Ultimately, I kind of gave up piano and focused on trombone, both classical and jazz. I was primarily classically trained trombonist. And so went to MSU. I was principal trombone in the Bozeman Symphony
Oh my gosh.
when I was an undergraduate, and played in MSU's 1 O'Clock Jazz Band and just all sorts of fun stuff. And it was actually a blast. And it was, I think, a great balance between studying engineering, which is very technical and analytical, and then the kind of right-brained side of music.
Create.
Yeah. And so it was a cool thing. And MSU really was a great place to do that, because the music school at the time, in order to fill out all their ensembles, really needed non-majors to play. And the opportunity to be on a music scholarship while studying engineering was
That's pretty cool.
unique.
Super. Does MSU still do that?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know they have a really good music program. I have cousins that went, took a bunch of music-based classes.
Yeah.
And they talk very highly of it. So did you get to travel with that a little bit, like the jazz? Or were you guys like, what is that?
Yeah.
I went to Rocky, so we didn't have a robust band.
Yeah, and as a music scholarship student, you also had to play in which I say had to play, it was actually fun to do, but you were required to play in the marching band, the Spirit of the West marching band. And so we traveled, we played we played Monday Night Football halftime in Seattle. We played Calgary Stampeders halftime for a CFL playoff game. We used to do some of that kind of stuff with the marching band. We used to go around, do some parades. Sometime, I'm probably not on this podcast, I'll tell you the story about when we marched in the Butte St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Oh, I'm sure that Butte being stated tells a lot.
Yeah, you can probably guess the punchline. And then in the jazz band, we used to travel to some jazz festivals,
Wow.
whatnot. And then we had a smaller group that we used to play dance gigs, weddings and receptions and stuff just for fun.
That's and to be a trombone player. I played trumpet, so some of my friends were trombone, and I was like, it was hard. Like, I tried it a few times. I was like, no, I need the trumpet. But a marching band, did you do that in high school? I imagine that's just it's cool, but you're moving and playing at the same time.
Yeah, and we certainly did it at a different level in college than in high school. But back when I was in high school in the 80s, all of the AA high schools had marching bands. We marched at every home football game. We marched in local parades. Most of the high schools now do not have marching bands anymore.
Yeah, because I feel like you don't see them, but they're like a novelty.
No, there's only a couple. I think Bozeman High School, I know the band director there still does one, but there aren't very many high school marching bands anymore, which I think is a sad loss, because that's such a part of the game day experience. It's a lot of fun for the students too. But yeah, so we were marching and doing that kind of stuff in high school. And then, the university marching bands are obviously at a different level in terms of,
And MSU is pretty big.
It is now.
What was it like when you in there? Because now they have a new engineering building that's really state of the art.
Yeah, Montana State has grown tremendously in a lot of ways, in enrollment, in the new buildings on campus, but the marching band too. When I was there I started there in 89, there through the mid 90s. That was during a time where the MSU football team hardly won a football game. And so there were a lot of times where the marching band was...
You guys drew the crowd.
There was a significant part of the crowd was the marching band. So we had to make our own fun. But now, with the success and the growth at Montana State, the marching band now is 4 or 5 times as big as when I was in it. It was a small crew when I was in it.
And their enrollment is huge now.
Yeah.
MSU's is. And it just keeps
growing a lot. Yeah.
And so what was it like engineering? So you're getting into it. You probably felt at one point, I would imagine, like, this is it. Like, it comes naturally. I'm loving it, inspired by it. Or was that not the feeling?
No. Interestingly.
Because I'm like, you're in it now.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So I studied engineering. I did fine. I was good in math and science, so I did well in school. even as I was finishing undergraduate school in engineering and civil engineering, I still wasn't convinced that it's what I ultimately wanted to do with my life. It was okay. I didn't love a lot of engineers, a lot of people who go into technical STEM fields do it because they love the technical analytical part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I never loved that. I still don't. I was good enough at it to do it. I love the work we do in our profession. I think civil engineering and now our firm, which includes landscape architecture and land planning and all those, has a tremendous impact on people's daily quality of life. We really are designing communities, and where people live every day and how they live is influenced by the built environment. And so I really fell in love with the work we do, or the outcomes of the work we do. And then at that point in time, I was still not sure that's what I wanted to do. I was looking at going to law school. I was looking at going to business school. And then the civil engineering department head at the time, I think, caught wind that I was thinking about going to law school, called me into his office that last semester and said, KG, what are you thinking about doing next year? And I started telling him, and he said, what if we offered you a graduate assistantship to stay here and get your master's degree? And at that point in time, my wife, my girlfriend at the time, was starting graduate school at MSU. And so I figured Sarah's going to be here for another couple of years.
I might as well stay too.
They're offering to pay me to go to graduate school 2 more years in Bozeman on somebody else's dime.
Why not?
And
Totally.
so it was great. Loved graduate school.
And was that for like a graduate program of engineering?
That's when I really started to say what I really like the most, because civil engineering is a really broad field. Everything from water and transportation and highways and structures, and you can go a lot of different directions with it. I chose to focus on transportation engineering and traffic engineering in my master's program. And it's really because transportation and land use are kind of two sides to the same coin. They go together. But transportation has a unique thing in engineering in that it's heavily influenced by the human factor. Which when you're building structures out of concrete and steel, you have a pretty good idea of what the properties of the materials you're using, how steel behaves, how concrete behaves. Water, we can build bench scale models and see how hydraulic structure is going to work because we know how water behaves. In transportation systems, we've got this odd character, which is the human, who make irrational decisions and don't always behave the way you want them to behave. And so there's a social science component to transportation that I really liked.
And you're talking about like building roads and bridges and things like that,
roads,
right?
Intersections.
And meaning people don't always stop when they should.
Sidewalks and street crossings and traffic signals and roundabouts. But you think about how much of your day... a lot of the day is taken up with or influenced by how you get around from one place to another, whether it's walking downtown or getting in your car and driving across town, parking, shopping. You're going to shopping, you have to park, you have to walk. I mean, a huge part of your daily life is influenced by how you get from one place to another. So I really like that aspect of transportation, how it impacts how we live and the quality of our daily life.
So what about that at a young age, right? Like your early 20s and you're like, I really am drawn to this. Like knowing it, what was it for you? Like the problem of it or mixing the human component with the road part? What was it for you that you're like, I really am drawn to that?
Well, it was definitely influenced by a professor. The professor I had at Montana State who was teaching the transportation courses at the time was very non-technical in his approach to how he taught that class and those classes I was in with him. And he used to take us to lots of these as part of our coursework. We would go to lots of like public meetings, sit in the back of city council meetings when they were
joyful
debating transportation plans, and go to the neighborhood meetings. And I'm sure the consultants that were doing those projects hated us, because this whole class of transportation students would show up and start asking questions and stuff. But
the community probably loved it. They're like, they're asking the good questions.
Yeah. It was through that I really started to get exposed to what the profession of transportation engineering really is like. It's not, coursework. It's not the rote problem solving that you do in a college class. And he really helped expose us to the real professional side of it. And
you have to get people. Yeah, you can build it, but you also then need people to support it, pay for it,
absolutely. Yeah.
Be okay with the bridge coming into their neighborhood.
Yeah. There's that whole kind of community piece of it that I started to get exposed to, largely because of one professor. And so when the time came to choose a graduate program, he had some research dollars available and offered me a place in his research team. And so that's really cool. What I did.
He saw something in you and was like, this might be.
Yeah. And we had a good relationship, because I'd been into a bunch of his classes at that point in time, and it just one thing led to another. But so then I get finished, as I'm finishing my master's degree, decided it was probably time to get a job and do something.
Well,
I was
who needs that?
But I still really was more interested in organizations, community aspects, not in the technical piece. It was only then, at the end of graduate school, that I finally had a conversation with my dad about what would it look like if I came back to Billings and went to work with you at Engineering Inc. at the time, which became Sanderson Stewart.
And you guys hadn't talked about it prior?
No,
really?
No.
So you go to engineering school, your dad's an engineer, and you guys didn't.
And even though I'd worked in the company summers since I was in high school,
hey, Michael, come back. Hey.
Yeah, there was never an expectation, never any pressure. That's what I would do. To his credit, I never felt that was something that was expected or required. It was really finally me who initiated the conversation, like, Sarah and I would like to stay in Montana. What would this look like? And so I came back to work here as a staff engineer at the bottom of the totem pole and started working my way up through the company.
Was he what was his reaction when, I would imagine he would be, if he didn't show it, I don't know your dad,
but ask him. I think he was
probably pretty proud
of that.
Yeah.
We certainly have worked alongside each other my whole career now. My dad still works for us to this day.
Wow. But he started.
He was one of the founders.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. In 1969.
Wow.
So it's a 56-year-old.
Did he go
company.
to MSU?
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of like a legacy.
Both my parents were MSU grads. Montana State College, I think, was his first diploma.
Wow.
So I think he was pleased and proud of that. We just kind of went to work.
Yeah. And working your way up through the company, which I think is important when you're like in a family, just so you understand the layers of jobs.
Yeah, I mean, great. He and his partner, John Stewart, great role models, very community engaged people. The company was always very engaged in the community and philanthropic as an organization, and all the things that just, kind of instilled the culture of the company. That's what you did. You were part of the community. You supported the community that supported you as an organization, and just the way they approached customer service and taking care of clients and all of that. I just kind of absorbed that. Of course, like I say, I grew up in the company, so I just witnessed that my whole life.
That was the expectation.
Yeah.
Of how you do it.
We didn't talk about it. Just that's what you
do.
Did. Yeah.
You take care of people.
Yeah.
And what they need.
Yeah.
So you guys moved back. Your wife, we have to know, what did she get her?
She got her master's degree in chemical engineering. Wow. Worked her whole career until a couple of years ago as in environmental engineering. So a couple engineers in the household. But like I say, I started at the bottom, working my way up for the company, but immediately I started working on my MBA because I knew the business and the organizational side of it was where I ultimately wanted to be. So that was always my desire. But
so you're doing the technical side a little bit. And then did you do your MBA remotely or?
It was the executive MBA through the University of Montana. Cool. So at the time you could do some of your coursework here and, occasional on-campus stuff in Missoula, but I ultimately graduated from U of M with my MBA, walked across the stage and
your Bobcat hat, or no, I'm kidding. I'm just
they didn't. So I tell people I'm a proud alum of the University of Montana, but I'm still very much
you bleed blue and gold.
Yeah.
Go Cats,
proud
go.
of my degree from both universities for sure. Both great schools.
Yeah, they are. We're lucky to have them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I was doing that while I was working full time as an engineer. I was studying in the evenings and
that's a lot
learning.
Going on.
Yeah.
To manage and do and look back on and be like, dang, I did both. I did all that.
Yeah. It's just what I do, what I did. I'd work during the day and I'd go home and I'd study business school stuff at night. And
what was that like learning some of those business things? Because for you coming with an engineering background, were things starting to be like, this is what I'm really liking and this is clicking?
Yeah. I loved business school far more than any of my engineering school work. That said, my background in engineering, the ability to solve complex problems, the analytical skills, everything you learn in engineering school is really just about how do you solve problems. You take data, you use the tools you've got to solve abstract problems. Really served me well
I bet it did in business school. Because you're basically doing that, just adding a few different elements.
There were a few of us in our cohort. There was a cohort that went through that program together is the way it worked. And that was the other thing I really liked about business school is it was very the cohort of people I was in the program with, very multidisciplinary. We had people from healthcare. We had people from banking. There were three of us who were engineers. It was people from all sorts of backgrounds. And I love working in multidisciplinary teams.
And people bring different perspectives based on those fields, I think, that just add value to the entire group.
So I loved that. But I can tell you I think there were three of us in the group who were engineers, definitely excelled at
the problem solving.
They
probably looked to you guys. What are they
thinking?
You help us with this? Can you help us? Because we need some help.
Yeah. But it was fun. I love that multidisciplinary teams, getting people with different perspectives, different backgrounds together to solve organizational issues and whatnot.
And so you did that. And then what was going on at work at Sanderson Stewart at the time? So you're working, getting your degree.
Yeah, I was working as a staff engineer and then a project engineer, managing projects, doing municipal and land development projects here in Billings primarily. And we were growing to some extent. We were still primarily a one-office Billings-based firm at that point. Mostly doing land development projects at that point in time, a little bit of public municipal work. But Sanderson Stewart over the years really had its hand in most of the significant land development in Billings over the years, starting with Rimrock Mall and, the marketplace and the Homestead Business Park and lots of residential development across the West End and the Heights. And there isn't very much of Billings you can drive around without touching a Sanderson Stewart project. And then that continued to, the Shadow Road Corridor and Shiloh Crossing and all of those things. We've done most of the development work in the medical corridor for the last 30 or 40 years. Just a tremendous...
Making big community impacts.
Yeah, just a tremendous community legacy that obviously started with my dad and John Stewart and has continued to this day. So it's a pretty proud legacy, I think, of
it gives me goosebumps
of the impact that the firm's had on the community.
And you probably can't drive around town without being like, oh, this project and we did this.
This and that.
Because it's like you just can't look at things the same after maybe knowing a little bit or being part of some of those things.
It's also a little bit of a curse of being a traffic engineer. You can't drive anywhere without
having
critiquing
Having your thoughts on how it should be done.
Yeah, exactly.
Traveling is probably interesting when you're out of town. Yeah. They should do X. Wow.
Yeah, my kids on vacation were like, roll their eyes when I'm like, I got to stop and take a picture of this, and they're like, oh my God.
Thanks,
seriously.
Dad. Good. We're on vacation. Just be on vacation. Yeah. Yeah. So you talk a little bit about the engineering, so that the technical side. When did you shift and start to get a little more involved in some other things within the company?
Yeah, it kind of grew up through the organization and started to take on more responsibility. At the same time, my dad, John Stewart, were starting to get to a point where they wanted to start to back off.
And it was the two of them at the time.
Two partners, okay. Yeah. And they had been partners in the business for a long time, 30, 40 years.
Which, were they friends? Just to like backtrack that, when they're like, hey, I do this, you have this thought.
I don't actually know the story of it. At the very beginning in 1969, the founders were my dad and a gentleman by the name of Jack Muller. John actually joined 2 or 3 years later, very close to the beginning.
Yep, early stages.
And then my dad and John ultimately bought Jack out of the business, and it was John and my dad who kind of really grew the company from there. Mm-hmm. So John wasn't there at the very beginning. I think John was also a longtime Billings guy, grew up in Billings. And so, I think they just met they were great partners in business for essentially their whole careers. And so they were looking to back off a little bit, and myself and a couple of partners, Rick Luthold and Dennis Randall, the three of us really started to take on the leadership of the company, and it was the three of us that ultimately bought my dad and John out of the business in 2002.
Oh, wow.
So a long time ago, 23 years ago.
A while ago.
Yeah. And so it just grew. I think that's how you grow into leadership positions, is you just do stuff. Yeah,
there's not really that I know of, like a playbook of here's what you need to do and how you need to do it.
There was stuff that needed to be done.
Yeah.
I saw opportunities to make improvements or whatnot, and said, hey, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. And people usually are like, well, if you want to do it, go for it.
Knock your socks off.
Yeah.
Go do.
Yeah.
Run.
Yeah.
So what were some of those things you saw that you're like, oh, we could do some of these things better or differently?
Well, that's hearkening back a ways. I think it's small, and this is the case to this day, in professional services firms, whether it's engineers or architects or accountants or lawyers. There's thousands and thousands of professional services firms like that around the country.
There are.
And most of them are really what I would call a really good professional practice. And the reason they call them practice, professionals want to practice their profession, right? Mm-hmm. They went into the law or into engineering or architecture because they want to do the work. And so most of those professional firms, and it's certainly the case in engineering and architecture firms, are 80 or 90% of them are 10 or 20 people or less. Because it's a couple of professionals who hung out a shingle, went into business for themselves. Mm-hmm. They do great work. They take great care of their clients. But they only get that big because that's about as big as you can be and manage the company by the seat of your pants. Mm-hmm. No real systems or processes, no real...
Small team, do what you can.
Yeah. Quality control is good, but only because those couple of principals are looking over the shoulder of everybody on every project. Like that's the quality controls process.
Not necessarily like an efficient system.
It's not it's not a
from what it sounds
it's
like.
not an efficient, scalable kind of thing, right? And that's the case in virtually everything, whether it's your systems and processes around people and training or accounting and whatnot. It's like the system is we've got one person who knows how to do that, and they do it the way they do it. And so as we were starting to look at wanting to grow, we started to say we need to start to be a little more intentional about
like that word.
these things.
And for you, was you guys were saying growth, were you thinking just growth in projects and capacity, or also maybe physical locations?
Yeah, all of the above. So like I said, we were at that point in time primarily a one-office firm, mostly doing land development projects.
In buildings.
In buildings.
Okay.
That's a lot of eggs in one basket.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Like what happens if
it's good when it's good
and
until
it's
it's
maybe a little
not.
bad when
Yeah,
it's
right?
bad.
You're going to live and die by the
Yep.
ups and downs of the local economy. And so we really started to say, you know, we need to diversify in a number of ways. Probably some geographic diversity, so we're not entirely in one market. Some client sector diversity. So we started to, and as a transportation engineer, I really started to pursue some state DOT work and some more municipal work. So we had some public sector clients, not just private sector clients.
Mm-hmm.
We started to reach out into some other
And
markets.
that's government contracting, really, right?
Yeah,
'Cause
which is
you
a whole
guys-
different world. And so, I mean, you got to build that muscle that
Yep.
wasn't there. Like, how do you...
And did you figure that out? Because we have a team that helps with that, for free. But did you guys have a staff person that kind of went into those systems? Because you have to bid, right?
It's
on
different.
Some
Yeah.
of those things?
Now, in engineering services, there's laws around qualifications-based selection. So you're competing on qualifications. But there's a whole procurement process when you want to win work from the state of Montana, or every municipality has their own kind of procurement process. Certainly, if you try to do federal, we don't do much federal work, but the federal government has a whole different procurement
Yeah.
process. So anytime you want to
They all do.
diversify into a different sector like that, there's a whole new set of rules to learn. There's a whole new group of people you have to meet and get to know and build trust with. And so, yeah, I mean, to start with, it was me camping in the office of, the MDT district administrator until he relented and gave us a job.
You have to do what you have to do. I love the hustle of it. And you're like, hello,
Yeah.
I'm here.
Hey, me again. Yeah.
Happy to see ya. We're going to be real good friends by the end of this.
Yeah, and it took us a number of years before they threw us a bone, and specifically the state, but also the municipalities that we were going after. They don't just throw their biggest, coolest job at you day one. You got to build some trust, and eventually somebody has to take a chance on you and give you a chance.
And someone did. It sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. I think back, we had specifically as we started to try to build our kind of statewide transportation work, there were lots of great firms already working here. You've got to steal some work away that would have gone to somebody else, right? And the first couple of jobs, I know were small ones. We're going to see how these guys do.
Test it out before we give them anything bigger.
But the big one that really put us on the map as a transportation firm was Shiloh Road, which is started a long time ago now.
The roundabouts. I remember coming up here for driver's ed, and it was like Billings had the first few roundabouts. So like you're learning about how to navigate those.
Yeah.
Driver's ed.
And so that corridor project
That's huge.
was an enormous project, 4.5 miles of corridor. There were 101 parcels of right-of-way to acquire. As I look back on it, the district administrator at the time was a guy by the name of Bruce Barrett. Bruce and I had gotten to know each other real well because I went to visit him a lot.
Yeah.
We'd done a couple of small projects. We had, because of our community engagement and relationships with landowners and whatnot, he took a chance on that, giving us that job. We probably had no business winning that project based on the amount of work we'd done at that scale. We had never done a corridor project of that scale.
But how do you do it if people don't give you the
But
chance to do it?
The biggest issue on that project was not there was any number of firms that could have done the engineering design. The big challenge on that project was how were we going to get that done with all the different landowners 101 parcels of right-of-way to acquire. The south end
Which is a lot in 4 miles.
Oh, yeah. No,
Like a lot.
Yeah. And Montana has strong private property rights. The state doesn't like to condemn property. And so, our goal was to acquire that right away without having to go to condemnation on anything. The south end of the project was in Yellowstone County. The north end of the project was in the city of Billings. The middle mile and a half, the city limits ran up the center line of the road. Half the road was in the city, half the road was in the county.
Weird zoning lines.
MDT was involved because it was on their urban route system. So you had, and then there were federal highway dollars, so you had the Federal Highway Administration. So we had 4 different agencies, city, county, state, feds, and 101 landowners. Mm-hmm. And so that was really the bigger issue versus what ultimately the engineering design. Now, the engineering design was cool too with the 8 roundabouts and everything. But in the end, just hundreds, if not thousands of meetings with landowners, sometimes sitting across the kitchen table from a farmer, having those conversations.
Back to the college experience,
Yeah.
right? It's like the technical stuff's, we got that in the bag. It's the people that you have to get on board.
The technical stuff is usually the easy part. And so in the end, we completed that project. We acquired 101 parcels of right-of-way without a single one going to condemnation.
Wow.
Which,
It was a huge win for your team. The first project went out of the gate.
Yeah.
Wow. And how long did it take?
I'm not even going to remember, but years and years of kind of pre-design and right-of-way and all of that just to get to the point where we could move forward with design. And then in the end, the corridor we designed, which was 8 multi-lane roundabouts, the first multi-lane roundabouts in the state, and at the time, and it still may be, unique corridor in the country with 8 multi-lane roundabouts in a series, ended up winning AASHTO, Institute of Transportation Engineers, American Public Works Association, a lot of design awards for us, and really put us on the map. And you need a big win like that. And then people take notice, and we've kind of grown our practice from there.
Wow.
But
it is kind of unique that you say it. Like, I remember going up, wasn't fully here yet, but like visiting Billings, and then it is different. I don't know anywhere else that I've been where that there's a route like that.
Yeah, it's pretty unique.
Travel.
There's a few others in the country for sure roundabouts have certainly continued to grow in their usage across the country. From a traffic safety standpoint, they are by far
in Mexico and Europe and other places.
Yeah, and the modern roundabouts we're hundreds and thousands of them around the United States now, and it's because they're safer. The traffic safety aspects of them are just better.
And it moves traffic.
Yeah, and they're great in moving traffic, particularly at off-peak times. If you've ever pulled up to that side street red light at an off-peak time where there's no traffic and you're sitting there at a red light waiting for the signals.
Do I run it? Do I know?
Yeah, why? Exactly.
We don't,
yeah,
that thought goes through our head.
We never do that, do we?
No, we don't. No.
But we've all been there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Why am I sitting here waiting for this signal to change when there's nobody here? Obviously, in a roundabout, it's great.
It's problem solving.
You roll right on through. But safety aspects is really what won the day, and why we ended up using roundabouts instead of signals.
So then what happened? So that's like the big project that really got you guys on the map. I imagine things just really took off from there.
Yeah, on the certainly on the transportation and public sector side. But interestingly, I jump back to the beginning. I think if you talk to my dad and John Stewart, they would tell you the same thing about Rimrock Mall at that early stage, because Rimrock Mall was built in the mid-'70s.
Okay.
At that point, young company, 4 or 5 year old, 6-year-old company, had done some land development work, but certainly nothing of that scale. And so here's the one opportunity to build a regional mall, which was a big deal at that point in time, right? That was the biggest.
That's the place to go.
That was the biggest project Billings had seen ever at that point in time. And the developer who took a chance on that little young company to do that project they'd probably tell you the same, like we had no business winning that job, but we just hustled and they took a chance on us. And then all of a sudden you're the company that did Rimrock Mall,
Wow.
right? And I mean,
It's a good project to reference.
it's no different than your personal resume, right? Somebody's got to you can't get experience until you've got some experience, right?
I agree.
And so somebody's got to take a chance on you.
When it's like 5 whatever years of experience, I'm like, how am I supposed to get that? Or how's anyone supposed to get that if no one gives them a chance to
If no one gives you a chance.
give you experience,
Right.
Which
And
I think
so
is really valuable.
I think back to as a company, no different than as individual, you know, you got to hustle, you got to work your butt off and make promises. Sometimes you're not sure if you're going to be able to cash that check, you know, but you're
going to work to make sure if you promise it, it's going to get done.
It's going to get done, right? You say, yep, we can do that. And to yourself, you're thinking, I have no idea if we can do that, but we're going to
figure it out.
We're going to figure it out. And then you just hustle and then you build on that.
So hustling from them, you guys, I'm liking this. It's good. The hustle to put in the work to get the projects to grow and do things and be known in those industries.
I mean, that's
sectors.
In my experience, when I see successful people, entrepreneurs, I think a lot of times you sit back and it's easy to look at somebody as like, well, you know, they were just in the right place at the right time, or they just got lucky, or in every case that I know of, what you find is they just hustled harder.
Mm-hmm. And put in the work.
Yeah.
Consistently, day in and day out. I totally agree with that.
They worked harder. They showed up every day, kept showing up.
And that's what paid off for them.
Yes.
Not the got lucky. I mean, maybe there's situations of that,
Yeah,
but I think there's a lot more that you just don't always see the behind the scenes of what people
and you
do
got
to
be
get where they're at.
Prepared to take advantage of opportunity when it arises. And then when the opportunity arises,
Rimrock Mall, Shiloh.
Then you got to make the best of that opportunity.
Totally.
And so I mean, my experience when I see successful people and have met successful people and you learn their stories, it's because they just worked harder than the next.
Mm-hmm. So how's that come for you guys now, being where you're at? I know you guys have grown a lot. You've acquired, if that's the right word, merged.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. And then I want to get into culture stuff because I know like you have a really cool model that I think, anyways, yeah. But we'll talk about the merge and the acquiring and the growth that you guys have seen.
You know, there's lots of inflection points in the growth of a company, and you make decisions about where you want to go from here. And so we get grown past that 20 or 30 person firm, and then we were at that 80, 90 going on 100 person firm. And we were really at a stage,
which is big for professional services.
That is
what you said earlier. That's a big team.
Yeah. When you get to be that size, there's a lot fewer of those companies out there. And then when you get to 500 to 1,000 kind of firms, there's not very many, right? Mm-hmm. So we were at a point where we were 80, 90 plus people. We had offices in Bozeman and Fort Collins, and we were now about 50-50 public sector, private sector.
What made the Colorado choice? So Bozeman is Montana, but Colorado's out of state, out of market, and a state, Wyoming, then Colorado.
Yeah, it was a personal for Rick, my partner, Rick Luthold. We had some clients. We'd been doing a bunch of work there for a while in North Dakota, in Williston and the Bakken, when that was the only thing going for a while. So we had an office in Williston for a while.
When it booms, it booms.
Yeah, well, nothing was going on anywhere else. And so it was a bit of a lifeline. You kind of had to be there because that was the only thing going on at the time. And so we were doing some work up there. We had some development clients who were doing projects up there who are actually based out of Colorado. So we had some client relationships down there. But then Rick's 2 daughters had both relocated to the Denver area. And he and his wife, Cindy, really just wanted to be closer to the girls. And their oldest had grandkids at that point in time. And they're like, we'd really like to be in Colorado. We had some client relationships down there. And so Rick moved down there. It was just Rick to start with, and we just started cultivating some work down there, which ultimately, and that was primarily in the Denver area where Rick was at, but one thing led to another, and we had the opportunity to hire someone down there, John Tufte. John and I went to college together at Montana State and worked together in our early days of our career, and he had been living in Fort Collins. We ended up connecting and had the opportunity to bring him back. Cool. And so just a sequence of events worked out, and we ended up opening that office at Fort Collins, and we've got a dozen people down there now, but
it's close, driving wise.
But it's a great market. The Front Range of Colorado, there's millions of people. You look at geographic diversification. Yeah, we had an office in Bozeman, but when you look at the Montana market, there's only 1 million people in the whole state, right?
Yep.
Love Montana.
Still more cows than people.
Great state to live in and raise your kids in and whatnot. It's a tiny little market. You're going to live and die to some extent by the ups and downs of the Montana economy, and we really wanted to have access to some bigger markets that are driven by some different, economic forces than Montana. Mm-hmm. So that was another reason to venture into Colorado. So, so you go back here a few years, and Dennis had retired. Rick was getting to the point where, we were starting to talk about what his exit strategy might look like. And Rick's still very much with the company today, but, we were starting to look at what's that transition plan look like. We had a great bench of young talent and other managers in the company that wanted to continue to grow the company. And that's the other thing about small professional services firms. They're great businesses. They allow people to live a nice lifestyle, but there's only so much free cash flow.
Yep.
And so if you're going to invest in growth, that limits what you have available to buy out retiring shareholders. Or if you're buying out a bunch of retiring shareholders, that really limits your capacity to grow. So we were looking at those types of things. We're also looking at a tremendous amount of change that's going on in our industry, and it's happening in all industries. There's a lot of consolidation going on in a lot of industries.
Yeah, there is.
Lots of private equity money flowing in. Certainly infrastructure-related businesses like we're in are attracting a lot of capital. And so we just saw the changes happening in the competitive landscape. Longtime firms getting acquired, or now with private equity backing, and the balance sheets of those organizations look very different than a traditional professional services firm. Mm-hmm. And their ability to compete for talent. In our business, it's a people. Every business at some level is a people business, but in professional services, it is the people. It is the people, right? And so you have to be able to win the war for talent. Mm-hmm. And we were just seeing all this change going on in the marketplace, and said, we didn't want to be the last one standing when the music stopped without a chair. And as we saw lots of change, lots of consolidation happening, we started looking at what our options were. We certainly had been courted by firms that wanted to acquire us. Mm-hmm. We weren't really interested in that, although, it was interesting.
Oh, I'm sure. Just to be in those conversations and know what you want and what you don't.
Yeah. And so, I had lots of conversations with people who wanted to acquire us, invest in us. It was a great learning experience just to learn what the marketplace looked like. Mm-hmm. But as you said, we've spent a lot of time kind of building the culture that we wanted. We had legacy in the communities we were in, and we were really afraid of that all going away if we were to be acquired by a larger firm that didn't value those same things. And so through the process of looking at what all of our options were, I ended up getting introduced to a gentleman who owned or was a significant investor in a engineering firm in Northern California was smaller than us. Belici and Associates, they were about 40 people. We were 90 people.
Yeah.
And that company, they were looking to grow, but they needed, their founder was nearing retirement. They needed a CEO. They didn't really have the kind of back office infrastructure of HR and finance and IT and marketing that they needed. We had really,
You had it.
We had, because we had been very intentionally growing that part of the business with the intention of being a platform for growth. But that's expensive. You start to invest in all that infrastructure. That's why a lot of small professional service firms
They
don't get to that level, because at some point you have to start to spend a lot of money investing in those systems and people to run that part of the business. Once you do start to build that, now you've got a scale to make that pencil out.
It's magnetic a little bit for other people that maybe don't have it, to be like, oh, dang, they can do all of that.
Yeah.
And they invested in that. That's a lot of money.
So we merged the two companies together, and then subsequently and we use the term merger. It's semantics.
Like merge, acquire,
what's an
all of it.
acquisition versus a merger? We use the term merger because we really are trying to find like-minded firms that have similar values and culture, and leaders that aren't necessarily looking to exit. Maybe there's a founder who's looking to exit, but we want the core of the leadership of these organizations to
be invested in and stay. And help us grow the company. Especially in their markets, I would assume, like those collective markets.
Because they're great practices, like I said. They've got the local client relationships. They're invested in those communities. And if we want those people to stay, if those people leave, then the value of the organization leaves with them. And so in every case now, which is we've brought 6 companies together now in the last 2 years.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So we just, the most recent one, which will be announced this week, which will be in the past when this podcast airs, is a firm that's a longtime Seattle area firm, 2 offices in Seattle, 1 office in Austin, Texas. With the addition of that, takes us up, we're about 300 people in 14 offices across the western U.S.
Wow. In Texas takes you south.
That's going to be the furthest south we've gone to. So
they're building roads and stuff all the time.
The West, all across the West, there's lots of growth happening, and we really do have a footprint across the West now. We've got 4 offices in California, 2 in Washington, 2 in Nevada.
Wow.
4 offices now in Montana. We're in Helena and Missoula.
You guys have been busy.
Yeah, so it's exciting. It's a new adventure for me in my role. So I'm, as CEO of the combined organization, really working with these principles of all of our business units now to work together, collaborate, share resources across the organization. But what it's done is it's given us scale. We've got a footprint that now has us in some really large markets.
So
diversification, further expanded our service offerings, and that scale really allows us to share resources. The ups and downs of workload in a small firm are hard to manage. It's like, okay, we've got more work than we can do right now, so we've got people that are burning out because they're working around the clock, but then all of a sudden we don't have enough to keep them busy, and so you're scrambling, and so you're like managing the peaks and valleys of workload is challenging in a small firm. With a bigger footprint, there's just more capacity to shift work and resources around to kind of even out those ups and downs. And then just the economies of scale had started to change so much in our business that it isn't a level playing field for small firms versus big firms. Stuff just like group health insurance.
Yeah.
When
the more you have, the better it is.
When you've got 20 people on your plan versus 300 people on your plan, you have the opportunity to negotiate better benefits, better terms, professional liability insurance, software licensing. I mean, all those things, are.
But you have to build it to get to that point where there's enough people.
And so big firms definitely have an advantage when it comes to those things. The challenge with big firms is having a coherent culture and approach to people and service, customer. Just culture
It's a big thing.
Permeates everything. I mean,
and you are really invested, right, in your workplace culture at Sanderson Stewart. I know we've had you speak at a couple different things, but how's that? Tell me a little bit about that for our listeners. And then how have you taken that and expanded it into all of your locations across?
So that's very much work in process.
Well, I'd imagine it would be because you have different, even state, like just different time zones and types of people that live in different states. Yeah.
So let me start with kind of where we were as Sanderson Stewart and now Sambell. So Sambell is the rebrand as part. Now that we're this larger organization, we've kind of moved away from all the individual legacy names and are growing under the Sambell brand. But speaking of the brand, I wanted to ask you about that too. When did you guys decide and start talking about the brand and the name change? Because that's a big deal for a company to say, hi, here's what we're doing moving forward. And it's expensive. I mean, signage, all the things that you say. Yeah. It was certainly contemplated before we even started that at some point in time, having 6 companies working under individual legacy brand was going to be challenging and probably would need to change. We didn't necessarily know exactly what the brand would be, but we knew it was going to have to change at some point. I think it happened a little quicker maybe than we even thought, because as you start to tell the story of this new, larger organization, you want to be able to tell your clients and the public that we've got the resources of this larger organization, right? And that's an advantage to you because we've got these other experts, we've got this other extra capacity. And then something as simple as you're putting a proposal in front of a client and the resumes in there all have different logos and names, and they're like, who is this? I thought exactly. It's very confusing, and trying to convey some brand consistency. Brand consistency is super important. You tell somebody the story that Sambell is a company of national significance, national caliber. We talk about world-class talent, but then you've got these kind of small little local brands that look like small firms, and it's, wait a second, I thought you were this, but it looks like you're that, and it's confusing, right? It confuses the customer, it confuses even recruiting new talent. I thought I was going to work for this, but you're telling me it's something different now. And so for all those reasons, we knew ultimately to communicate a consistent message of value, quality, all the brand, it had to be consistent. And so then there was a process of deciding what we were going to.
Yeah, where did Sambell come from?
So Sanderson Stewart and Belleci and Associates were the first 2 companies. And so we didn't want to mash it up and have just a list of long, difficult to pronounce names. And so it really was, as to some extent, testing words that were easy to say and spell.
Spelling is the thing, too. Like for people to be able to hear it if you're talking to someone on the phone and write it and type it.
If you see Sambell, Sanbell, nobody's going to mispronounce that.
No, I'd hope not, yeah.
And it's ultimately, yes, it started as a mashup of those 2 names, but we really want it to just be a name. It's its own thing.
Yep.
We looked at a few other variations of things, but it honestly came down to something as practical as going out and seeing, could we even get that internet domain?
Or would we have to pay a lot because somebody has it?
Well, there were a couple we looked at.
And they're just waiting for someone to pay them the right amount.
Yeah. There were a couple we looked at that were owned by somebody that they wanted insane amounts to,
Of course
you know.
they did.
So, you know, to some extent, it came down to some practical decisions about what's available. Does it fit our criteria of easy to pronounce, easy to short, 5 to 8 letters?
Oh, it fits on everything. It's a great logo. Colors are awesome.
And so then your brand is not your logo, right? Your brand is
your people, your reputation.
It's how people perceive you, how they experience your company, you know, what every aspect of how people interact with you influences their perception of your brand. The name and logo is a vehicle for communicating certain aspects of that. But at the end of the day, the Nike swoosh is known around the world not because it's the world's greatest logo, it's because they spend billions of dollars a year marketing it and putting it on
everything,
celebrities and, you know, sports heroes. And, you know, I mean, it's so...
It means something. You feel something about it. Like you maybe wore Nike stuff growing up when you played on a sports team. Like there's feeling associated with it.
But it's because they've invested billions and billions of dollars to
see the swoosh and you know it's Nike.
Tell you that story. And so we honestly we spent obviously a fair amount of time developing what the brand was going to look like. But at some point I was like, we need to just move on and start telling the world who this is. Like, you could spend a crazy amount of time, and I think a lot of companies do spend months and years and millions of dollars on branding, where what really matters is the effort you put into telling people the story of what that brand means.
I totally agree with that.
It's less important what the logo looks like and more important what...
Yeah, you want people to like feel something and be associated with it in some way and care about it. Like the logo is the logo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you got to go...
What's the story
convince
of it?
people what that means.
And why should they care?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And make sure that your actions support that brand every day, right?
Which goes back to the culture conversation, right?
Which is culture.
Like your team is Sandbell. That's what makes Sandbell Sandbell.
So what I tell people is your brand is a lagging indicator of your culture.
Yeah, that's good.
So culture and brand are very much part of the same thing. So if your culture as an organization, how your people act, how they treat customers, how they're seen and perceived by the public, that's all culture, right? How your people behave when you're not looking, right? That's culture. If you ask people to describe who a company is, they're describing your brand. It's a reflection of their interactions with your people, and you know, and so culture, you know, brand very much is a reflection of your culture. Everything starts with culture, and culture has gotten to be such a, you know, just overused word that I even sometimes like resist using the word anymore because everybody talks about it.
But you guys were doing things in that space way before it was like the cool, trendy like word to use and throw around. Yeah,
and it's always a work in process. I think culture of an organization, I talk about culture first approach to decision making and to how we do things. And what I mean by that is we have to be intentional and aspirational about the culture we want to create. So culture doesn't...
It's not there and then it's good to go.
You know, and if you're not intentional and describe aspirationally, this is the culture we're trying to create, your organization will have a culture. But it'll be whatever bubbles up, and it may not be awesome, right?
Yeah.
And so, as much as anything, culture has to be driven by leadership, and saying, okay, this is the culture we want to create. This is how we want to behave as an organization. These are the types of things we want to do, and you have to describe that, and not just hollow core list of core values, like very intentionally saying this is how we want to behave. What does integrity mean? Like you see
what does it, like how does that act it out every day in the work you do?
And so you see the list of core values: honesty, integrity, excellence, blah, blah, blah. Everybody says that. Like who wouldn't say those things?
We all aspire to do that.
But what does that actually mean? And how do we do something that's maybe uniquely different than somebody else? If it's table stakes that everybody does, then that's not a cultural differentiator as an organization. And so what are those, so writing, and we haven't even really done this yet for Sandbell, because as we've brought these organizations together, we can't just take the Sanderson Stewart Culture Guide and just say,
which is really cool,
and say, this is your culture guide now.
You got to have people like be invested in.
Right. So there's a process to make those types of things happen. But then the culture first piece is, okay, we've described the culture that we want to create. Literally everything decision you make is going to impact your culture either positively or negatively. Okay, we're going to put in place a policy around virtual hybrid workplace, or we're going to adopt some policy, some personnel policy around, leave, or whatever it is. Is this thing we're contemplating going to get us closer to that culture we say we want to create, or is it going to detract from that?
I think that's really good.
And because it's going to do
what's that policy saying about what we value?
Culture is what you tolerate.
Yes, I like that too.
So you can say these are the things we value, but if you tolerate a behavior that isn't consistent with that, people aren't stupid. People are going to, actions speak louder than words. They're going to say, okay, these are the list of values on the wall in the conference room, but they allow this behavior to go on, so clearly this is okay. And
these are whatever, just words on the wall.
Right. And so you really have to make sure that your actions, the policies you're putting in place, are consistent with that culture you aspire to. And that doesn't mean that we're perfect at it at all, right?
It's ever evolving.
It's aspirational, and it should be aspirational. Like we're trying to get better at that every day. And when we see something that's not consistent with that culture, then we have to act on that, right? And that's, people change, organizations change. There's no stasis in organizations. So it's not like, well, someday we're going to arrive at that culture and then it's all going to be
No, then
perfect.
You're going to have a new aspiration that you're like, really, especially as you're growing. So what are some of those things that you guys are being intentional about, which it sounds like you very much are, but that are top of mind for you now as you have another one that you're merging with, as you're really holding and growing your culture to be top of mind? And
so first of all, the question of how do you merge cultures, or how do you change, okay, now you're merging these other organizations together, and what are you doing to integrate cultures?
Yeah, because you hear of horror stories sometimes as mergers happen in companies or acquisitions.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I think is wrong about the approach that people take and the horror stories, the mergers gone bad stories that we've all heard, and there's long lists of acquisitions, mergers and acquisitions gone bad, is the attitude that the first thing you need to do is integrate this culture. You need to change something about culture. That is super disruptive to people because they worked at that organization because they liked the culture that was there, right? And so, I think the important thing that we're trying to get right, is finding organizations that already have most of the same kind of shared values, so that we don't have to change it.
Yeah.
Now, the culture's different. Our offices in Ventura, California, and our office in Billings, Montana, don't look and act exactly the same. They're different places. The people come from different places. Our offices in northern Nevada don't look and act like our offices just a couple 100 miles away in Northern California. Mm-hmm. But that's okay, as long as we want some of that local
that
flavor.
makes them excel and be successful in those markets.
And that diversity of viewpoints, backgrounds, approaches is a healthy thing in an organization. I think diversity of ideas and thoughts and backgrounds and all those things should over time improve our outcomes.
And maybe add value to what the Sandbell mission is and what you guys are trying to accomplish by having different voices at the table.
So if we embrace those regional differences as part of Sandbell's culture, then the intent is not to make them homogenous.
Yeah.
It's to celebrate those differences as part of our culture.
Yeah.
Now, there needs to be some things that are consistent in terms of things we value about how we approach customer service and how we take care of people. And there needs to be some shared values.
Yeah, totally.
So you've got guardrails.
But what can grow from those in those local offices?
But within those guardrails of we're not going to compromise on certain aspects of our values. Mm-hmm. But within those guardrails, there's a lot of latitude for this diversity of backgrounds and ideas and things that come with, having a bigger, wider footprint. Mm-hmm. But I see that as a healthy part of our growth.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me, I just got finished, and I know you went through it too, Leadership Montana, and it kind of reminds me of that as you're talking about the different offices where at Leadership Montana, you all come from different parts of the state. Maybe you didn't even grow up in Montana, but you're all bringing something different, but like how you work so well together and build those really strong relationships that it's like so much better than you even thought it could be because you met these people and you have these shared values through a program like that is what it reminds me of. What you're saying.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you went through it too.
Yeah,
right?
I was in the second class of Leadership Montana, so it's been a long time now, but
it's
what
like
a great program.
Yeah, and you don't know anyone coming in, and then by the end of it, you're like crying because you're not going to, all the emotion and things that you've just grown and done together, which your offices are all doing right now as they're growing and you guys are merging with others and doing more things.
So one of the things we're doing, and this is still a very new adventure for us. I mean, Sandbell only, in its current form, only came into existence a couple of years ago now. Mm-hmm.
23, right? 2023,
May of 2023
May,
was the initial kind of launch of it. So a little over 2 years ago is all. But is starting to create the relationships across the organization. And there's no better way to do that than in person. And so one of the things we've done twice now, and we'll do it for the third time this fall, is brought our entire leadership team. And so back to the merger versus acquisition, as we've brought these companies together, 100% of the shareholders of these various firms have rolled ownership into Sandbell. So today we have over 70 owners, 70 shareholders, 72, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, 72 shareholders in our organization. And we will bring all of those people together in person for 2 days this fall. We've done that each of the last 2 years for 2 days of training and team building and strategic planning work together. And just like you were talking about the experience that you had with Leadership Montana, each of the last 2 times we've done that, the first time we did it, we were only a few months into this, and we brought 40 people together in a room in Big Sky for 2 days. Wow. And I was the only person in the room when everybody showed up who'd actually met everybody in that group. Everybody else was meeting each
For the
other
first time.
for the first time.
Wow.
But by the end of the first day, and certainly by the end of the second day, you'd have thought those people had worked together their whole careers. And it's amazing how, you start with that apprehension of who are these people? Do I have anything in common with these people? Am I going to even like these people? And then you pretty quickly start to recognize how much we have in common.
The shared values probably, which is probably a nice thing for you to see of, we did, just validating to say we did make the right decision. These people all do value the same things.
And so pretty quickly you start to say, okay, wait a second. These people have similar stories. They have similar values. Right out of the gate, we're obviously doing similar work. Mm-hmm. So we got lots of things in common. And that only grew last year when we had 60 people in the room, and we'll have almost 80 in the room this year.
They're probably all looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
We can't wait for the fall team retreat, leadership retreat.
And so we've started with leadership. We've got to get leadership together, building those relationships. It's way easier for me to reach out to you virtually if I already have that personal relationship. We met for 2 days in Big Sky and got to know each other and had a beer and ate a meal together. And, we have this personal relationship. Then throughout the year, when I need to buzz you on Teams and talk to you virtually, that's much easier to do when you already kind of have a relationship with the person on the other end. Yep. And so we started with leadership because you got to get leadership on board.
Yeah, they're the ones that kind of set the tone and stage for everybody else.
And their teams are going to reflect their attitudes and approach. But ultimately, we want to create more and more opportunities for others throughout the organization to experience some of those same types of things and bring people together for various workshops and trainings and different things where we can get people from all of our business units together to start to build those relationships and create those bridges. That is where the real culture building happens.
Yeah, but it's harder too, like when you're across the country a little bit. But I think starting with your leadership is really cool. I bet
it kind of has to start there, but ultimately I'd love it if we could, I want everybody in the organization to be able to have one of those experiences.
Because it's valuable at all levels.
Yeah.
This has been a really great conversation. I have 3 rapid fire-ish questions for you before we end our time today. So thanks for being here. My first one is for someone starting out in their career. What advice would you give them if they're just starting out?
That's a great question. My advice, and I teach part-time at Montana State.
Yes, you do, which we didn't even hear.
As an adjunct professor. And so I actually get this question a fair bit from students coming out of school, like, hey, what should I be thinking about as I'm looking for my first job? And my advice is usually to look at your first opportunities, not through the lens of how much am I going to make, but how much am I going to learn? And this is hard for students who maybe have student debt and expenses. And so I get all that, like they've got to pay their bills.
Right. But it's like also the no experience conversation again too, where it's like, where can you get a lot of that's going to then set you up better in your late 20s, early 30s.
But in the scheme of things, your starting salary will have very little impact on your ultimate kind of long range wealth, right? Virtually no impact.
Yep.
If it was possible, like you'd be better off taking that first job for free if it was with, now I'm not suggesting you do that, but
get paid a little.
You need to get paid a fair wage. You need to get paid fairly for sure. But looking at who am I going to be working with? Am I going to be working with an individual or a team that I'm going to learn a ton from, and the type of work and the type of people, and then you just learn like a sponge, because you can leverage that early learning and take that in any number of different directions as your career unfolds. And so like the opportunity to work with just an amazing mentor who's highly connected in the industry.
And be a sponge and take advantage of it. I think from what I've found is like people want to help you. just ask and be that sponge and be there and do the extra things, because it'll reward you tenfold later in life.
Yeah, so it's really about looking for opportunities early in your career where you can learn the most, not where you can make the most.
That'll come later. Based on learning the most early in your career. The earning part will come fast and furious later. Yeah, I like that. Just as we're adding, and I did mean to ask, what do you teach?
Well, primarily I've taught in the civil engineering department. I've taught the intro to transportation engineering class. But this last year I had the cool opportunity to teach a seminar in the Honors College, which was more of a humanities seminar.
I bet they learned a lot from you.
And it was a blast. Yeah, it was the most fun thing I ever did.
Are you doing it again?
Not this year. I'm taking a year off.
Okay.
But I'll
taking a year, but you'll be back.
I'll be back.
You'll be back.
I love being in the classroom.
Yeah, they're lucky to have you. I think having the background that you do for the fields that they're all going into.
People ask me all the time. We're probably veering off your rapid fire question.
We'll get back to
them. Like, how do you have time as a CEO to be in the classroom? And I think there's tremendous. One, I love it, so it's energizing for me.
It really fills your cup.
Yeah. But there's also tremendous value to me and to the organization, because I feel like I have a better pulse on the upcoming workforce and what they value and how they think and what they're going to want to see in an employer and in a career than most people do, because I am in the classroom talking to these students, spending time with them.
They might be your future employees.
Yeah, for sure. No, we've definitely hired
which is great,
quite
honestly.
a few. But just having that, winning in professional services is about winning the war for talent, and having insights into what that future talent pool values and how they think is an invaluable piece of intelligence that it's hard to read in an article.
Yeah, game changing a little bit.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think, just like you said, you enjoy it.
Yeah, and which is not a small thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you got to do some things that fill your cup, as you say.
So that actually leads me to my next question. So you're the CEO. You guys have like locations. You've got lots going on. What's some advice you have for maintaining quality friendships while you're really busy and out and about doing lots of different things?
Friendships within the organization or outside of the organization?
Outside, yeah, more personal friendships with like friends and family.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard to balance, because being not just CEO, but being heavily invested in your career takes a lot of time and energy. And if you're gonna hustle and stuff, you really have to spend the time. And sometimes that's nights and weekends and all the things, right? And certainly in a CEO role, it is kind of a 24/7, 365 kind of job. I try to shut it off when I can, but there's lots of times you're responding to things when it needs to be responded to, right? And so I try to, I've got a handful of good friends, not a lot, I spend a lot of time with my family, and my kids are my best friends, and my wife, and we try to prioritize time together. We travel a lot together and stuff, and you need to know when to turn the switch off and be present. I'm not the poster child probably for that.
Well, you have a lot going on, so.
But yeah, you need to prioritize time for yourself and for those types of relationships, because there will always be more work to do than there's time available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I like what you said. I sometimes say it as like quality over quantity, which I don't know if that's the best thing, because I do a lot, like my family, like weekends. I'm like, I have some close friends, but really it's like we're doing stuff with family all the time. And I just like love those moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd love to be doing other things, but I'm like, if I have to like work stuff, and then family rises to the top too. Okay. My last question is, what are some of your non-negotiables in business and in life?
Non-negotiables. I don't tolerate laziness. that's something that's just like, if you're going to do something, do it with all the effort and do the best you can at it, or don't do it at all, right? And just lack of transparency and integrity is just, I don't like to be lied to. I don't like to be BS. I've got a pretty strong BS meter. Like, I can take lots of bad news, but just be honest. Be honest. Then we deal with that. You can deal with it. I can solve a problem once I know what it is. But when you're not getting the straight story. So it's just that kind of stuff. Be honest. Be straight up. Tell it like it is, and that goes a long way. Yeah. And then just work hard. Like I say, that's probably, laziness is probably my kryptonite.
Well, you hustle and you do a lot, so
yeah,
I get why that would be the case for you. Yeah. So it's been so great to have this conversation with you. So thank you for being on The Vault. Where can people connect with you and learn more?
Well, they can certainly connect with Sandbell at sandbell.com. They can check us out. I'm on LinkedIn. You can search me up. I'm happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest place for people to connect with me.
Yeah, so connect with you on LinkedIn and website and social. Sandbell has, Instagram,
Sandbell
Facebook.
Social. You can follow us on Instagram,
TikTok. I don't know.
Facebook. I think we've got a YouTube channel. I don't know.
Cool. Yeah, just look up Sandbell. I'm sure it's on your
search
website.
Sandbell. You'll find us.
Yeah.
There's links to all of our social, and you can follow us there. And I know it's been a pleasure, Marcel.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for listening to The Vault. Connect with us on Facebook at The Vault at 201 North Broadway, or Instagram at TheVault_201. Or check us out on our website, thevault@201.com, where you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter. See you next time.